There was a time when people thought the written word would destroy faith. That memory would disappear. That wisdom would shallow out. That truth would be diluted once it was no longer spoken face to face. There was a time when people believed the printing press would fracture the church beyond repair. That giving people access to Scripture would create chaos instead of clarity. There was a time when translating the Bible into everyday language was considered reckless, dangerous, and deeply unfaithful. And every single time, God kept working. Today, we're living through another one of those moments. Artificial intelligence, algorithms, machines that write, translate, analyze, and assist. Some people are afraid. Some people are defensive. Some people are quietly curious. But today is not about fear. It's about the future. Welcome to The Means of Grace, the podcast where we talk about how God shows up in ordinary tools, imperfect systems, and very human lives. I'm Jesse Enniss.
And I'm John Yeager. Today we're talking about technology, faith, and the future we're actively building together. And we are joined by the perfect man to talk to about this, Nathan Webb, author of the new book, God and the Machine, a thoughtful, hopeful, and deeply pastoral exploration of how faith and technology don't have to be enemies. Nathan, we're glad to have you here. How you doing?
I am really glad to be here. I'm doing good, enjoying talking technology to all sorts of wonderful folks through the means of technology like the World Wide Web to record all these conversations.
That's right. We're swimming in the waters. Why not?
Before we continue, I wanted to take a moment to share a few things that are happening around the Western North Carolina Conference. The 2025 Annual Conference Journal is now available online. This journal is a record of the actions and data of the Western North Carolina Conference as of a particular point in time. This year's journal is one volume containing reports, minutes, events, and the 2024 statistical reports. Registration is open for the 2026 Peace Conference on March 13th to the 15th. At the beautiful Lake Junaluska Conference and Retreat Center. Clergy and laity of all ages will gather to fellowship, dialogue, and learn with renowned peace builders. Through 3 days of worship, plenaries, workshops, hands-on shalom experiences, film screenings, and fellowship, there will be strategies and hopes of how people of faith can build bridges of peace across political, theological, and social divides. And lastly, are you ready to expand your ministry beyond the walls of the church? Join the AI Advantage cohort, a live Zoom training designed to help ministry leaders save time and extend their reach using practical, spirit-led AI tools. This is a 3-session cohort on February 10th, 17th, and 24th from 12 to 1 p.m. And now, back to our conversation with Nathan Webb. Love it. Well, Nathan, before we get into the ideas, tell us a bit about yourself and what pushed you to write this book.
Sure. So a little bit of background on me is I am an ordained elder in the Western North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church. And so I am very in deep with ministry and theology and all the conversations going around it. And then on top of that, I'm also a church planter in this conference. And I planted a church about 6 years ago called Checkpoint Church, which is a church designed with nerds, geeks, and gamers in mind. And that is very much my bread and butter because I am a nerd, a geek, and a gamer. And given the nature of when we started and also the demographic that I wanted to focus in on with my church plant, technology has been a part of my everyday from the very beginning. We are a digital first church, which means we meet online first and foremost, primarily through a platform called Discord, which is kind of like a fancy Facebook group. And so I just have a real passion for technology. Coincidentally, in that same year and really the couple of years to follow, we also saw this rise of artificial intelligence and all these companies that now have become ubiquitous, like OpenAI and ChatGPT and Gemini and all these fancy words that if you told me these like 7 years ago, I wouldn't have known what you were talking about, but now it's everywhere. And I also saw that these people that I love, these nerds, geeks, and gamers that I'm finding online, were getting a little nervous. They were getting a little scared. They were a little bit overwhelmed by artificial intelligence. And then on the pastoral side, I saw a lot of my peers and mentors getting gung-ho for this exciting new technology. And I just got a little concerned about these two worlds that seemed kind of fated for collision. What was going to happen whenever these people who were really scared of this technology and these people who were really gung-ho about technology met and collided and had to work through their differences in the midst of all this. And so this book was written out of that kind of lens. I feel like I'm able to offer something in being in both of these worlds as somebody who is very curious about technology, very willing to utilize technology for practical ministry, but also very passionate about a people group that is afflicted in this kind of environment. So in those two lenses, I brought together a hopefully endearing approach to a way that we can go forward into this together with curiosity, with caution, and ethically.
Love that. Love that.
I like it. So, remind me, when was the year that you planted the church, when you first started this?
So 2020, July 2020.
2020, so that was right in COVID, or right the very, very beginning. Yeah, I was just trying to think. I thought those two kind of coincided, but I wasn't sure.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I like is that a lot of, and you preach this probably frequently, that a lot of books that have been written in the Christian world about technology have been mostly apprehensive / standoffish, maybe even pushing even harder, warning, trying to just the temptation, right? Temptation. It's all that is temptation, and you should always be focusing on that instead of being able to use it. So I like that your book, while it addresses the fact that tech, I think as you say, isn't neutral. It has aspects to it, but you assume that the tech is not evil. And it assumes that people matter, that the people using the tech is what matters. And as the great Michael Scott once said, people, Ryan, people will never go out of style. So I want to start here. Your book uses the word machine. When you say machine, what do you think? I think Skynet. And I think I named Terminator. One of my AI algorithms Skynet, actually.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
But what is a machine to you? Go into that.
Yeah, so that's kind of a funny story that shows up in the final chapter of the book of my initial pitch. So like I mentioned, big nerd, geek, and gamer. And a part of that nerdery is that I also love anime. And so my initial pitch for this was Holy Ghost in the Machine, and kind of making a little play on Ghost in the Shell and this concept of what does it mean to be in a world of like transhumanist kind of thought, which is a fancy way of saying like augmenting humans with, technology and electronics and that kind of thing. Yeah. And so that was very much in my mind, was like, this is an appropriate boundary that I'm laying from the title of God and the machine. And so one of the arguments that I'm really working with in this is that there is this distinct difference between the machines, the tools, the stuff that we make, the technology that we implement knowledge into, and the divine. And so I'll lay out pretty clear, like as a difference being one of the big differences between humanity and technology and machines is the Imago Dei. Like, we are made in the image of God. That is a fundamental difference. It's a fundamental part of what's going on here. And so that's in the title there as well. Like, I'm trying to lay the boundary of what's going on here in the relationship between the divine, the relationship between humanity, and the relationship between the technology that we implement. And so whenever I am talking about machine, I'm trying to really lay some groundwork of the differentiating factors, the things that make us human, the things that make technology technology. And I do try to define that periodically throughout the book as basically being knowledge applied. Technology is knowledge applied. And talking about that as well within our like spiritual zeitgeist. Like, even whenever we have biblical stories of technology, like I would consider Bezalel one of the famous technologists, which is one of the folks that was tasked with making the Ark of the Covenant. And it says that the Spirit worked through this skilled laborer.
Yeah.
The technology that Bezalel was able to implement, the knowledge applied, the Spirit augmented Bezalel to do that best. And so all of that gets back into, that's the relationship, is that the human still has to be the conduit for which this technology happens, because the technology itself is merely the implementation of knowledge. So all of that, for me, is trying to do the work of like laying some boundaries, laying some guidelines, and trying to understand the relationship between all of these various moving parts in a time where it can feel really tempting to replace relationships, replace humanity, replace friendships with something that simply cannot do that work.
Yeah, it feels like we keep repeating that same story. You know, a new tool appears and we panic. We start to assume that it's going to start taking the place of humans in certain ways, that life is going to change, it's going to do irreparable damage, and then we learn how to live with it.
Yeah. I like to give people, our clergy out there, some sermon fodder to go with if they want to talk about AI. So a quick minute of history. Tools. When we first learned how to write things down, Plato panicked. He was worried that writing would weaken our memories, hollow out wisdom. Why remember anything if you could just write it down or look it up? Socrates never wrote anything down, which, ironically, we only know because someone else wrote that down. History has a sense of humor, but there's a story from ancient Greece about a king who refused to start using the latest tools of siege, even though it would have given him a huge advantage and saved his own men's lives. He thought relying on machines instead of warriors would change the soul of his people. Courage would become mechanical. He didn't want to be like the armies that sat around and waited for the walls to come down. Victory would come from a distance instead of sacrifice. And to be fair, this is the same era that thought helmets with plumes were essential to bravery, so perspective matters. But he wasn't wrong. It changes things. And believe it or not, just the ability to write something down and dump it out of your head is augmenting your mind. It's augmenting, as Nathan said, our natural ability. You're putting it somewhere else and you're filing that away so you don't have to remember it. You are essentially using tools to augment, to change the natural human ability, which is what we do. Tools don't make humanity weak. It makes us change. It makes us adapt. And oftentimes the tools become adapted more than we do. The printing press didn't end faith, it expanded it. Vaccines didn't destroy trust in God, they saved lives. The radio didn't erase community, it carried voices into living rooms. But history reminds us that not every tool is harmless once it's unleashed. In the 40s, Robert Oppenheimer helped open the door to the atomic bomb, and standing at the edge of power, he said, "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Humanity's Pandora's box. Once it was opened, it could never be closed. Now, AI is helping to diagnose disease. It's translating scripture. It's supporting exhausted pastors. It increases accessibility, frees up time for deeper relationships.
Nathan, where have you seen AI used in ways that genuinely serve people?
Yeah, I mean, being in a space that I am in, having the opportunity to plant a church in the space that I am in, like, I don't know how I would do what I'm doing without AI being interwoven into so many of the processes. Even from before I knew what it was or what it was doing, and that's also a helpful thing to think about is like, what do we mean when we say the word AI? What are we talking about when we talk about artificial intelligence? There's so many different ways that it has appeared and ways that it has
I don't know,
manifested
Nathan.
itself.
What are we talking about when we say AI? Which is helpful.
Yeah, exactly. That's an important part.
What would your
of
definition? How would you define it?
Well, I think that's the troublesome part is that it's an umbrella term. And so for me, it comes down to not so much defining what is artificial intelligence, but more how has it manifested itself. So I mentioned, some of those ubiquitous names earlier of like OpenAI, ChatGPT, and then we have Google and Gemini. Those are both kind of variations of the same thing. We've got LLMs, these learning language models. And so these are the ways that predictive text is being placed within a system. So again, it's kind of a technology in and of itself, and then how we utilize it varies. Now they're trying to do this thing where all of these various models have multiple like capacity. So they're able to not only generate predictive text and create things that are written and guess what you're going to say and put in the next word and that kind of stuff, but they're also able to create images, they're able to create videos, they're able to put together files for you, to accumulate things, to comb through your own files and organize that kind of stuff. So all of that is all housed within this one thing. But then we also have other instances of artificial intelligence, such as a like chatbot, such as the things that we have where you might go to a website and you want to talk about the furniture and a little chatbot pops up and you ask about what piece would be right in my living room and it combs its inventory and finds its stuff and starts chatting with you. Or your church may have a chatbot and they ask what time are the worship services, and the chatbot's going to say what time the worship services are. So those are more of like a reactionary type of AI. Alexa is one of those examples. Sorry for everyone whose little robot in their house just went off whenever you heard that. But right, we have these little devices in our homes that are voice activated that give us a reactionary response. It's less about prediction and more about, hey, what's the weather today? Oh, here's the weather. Just kind of a like give and take relationship versus a more generative, predictive relationship that we have. So all of these things are housed in these various different means. But then there's also things. I work in the world of video games, and we've had AI for a long time. Like back in the way back days. I can remember playing like for the Nintendo 64, like GoldenEye, and we would call the other computer players AI. Like those were the game AI that was playing the game with us. So like we've had this. This has been a form of intelligence within the systems that we have, where it's just a list of code that tells the computer AI to do this, that, or the other. That's getting smarter. Sure, everything evolves, but ultimately, there's been a lot of manifestations of this thing for a lot longer than we really acknowledge or realize. We also have the ones.
I can't remember. Big Blue, I think, was the chess. Wasn't that the chess guy that was playing all the Grandmasters? I think it was called Big Blue.
Yes, something like that. Yeah, exactly. And they had the Jeopardy bot as well, like that kind of stuff. They've had all these different things. And then there's also the AI that's like baked into social media. And so whenever you scroll through and you land on an image and you look at that image for longer than a few seconds, all of a sudden you're going to be seeing a lot more of that exact image. If you click like, heaven forbid, you're about to see so many more of that creator or of that type of image. So like it's all of these various ways that it manifests itself. And so it's a lot of different things. But for me, some of the ways that I have seen it really becoming a serious boon in ministry or in our church lives are the ways that we connect with one another. So for me, with my digital first community, we have a lot of people who want to have a space that is church for them, but they aren't necessarily able to go to a in-person church experience. And that may be for a myriad of reasons. One of those reasons might be disability. And so some people may be like sight inhibited and they need screen readers, Well, AI is allowing my church in particular to have like more accessibility, better screen readers, better alternative text on our posts and on our things that we create, so that screen readers know what to read and know how to describe an image or whatever might be appearing before on the screen. So all of that is like things that I wouldn't have been able to do before or even known how to do before or had the capacity to do before are now being created in-house in a matter of seconds in that way. So that's huge. We also have this really cool thing on YouTube where we reached a partner status on YouTube. And as soon as we did, they added the ability for not just translating our subtitles of our videos, but they are also now dubbing my voice. So they're taking those translations and they're creating like 7 other languages of my voice, presenting my sermons in somebody's native tongue in a voice that's sort of like mine. Now, we're always going to have errors in there, but like that is an incredible feat of like literally being able to speak to people that I would have never been able to speak to before in their native tongue.
I love that. I love that. And your book is super hopeful, I believe, helping us to see that, you know, we are created in God's image, that we have a responsibility to live into that image, but also recognizing that these AI models are tools that we can use, but it's not naive, right? So can you help us understand a little bit what can't AI do?
Or shouldn't.
Can't
very
versus
different
should
conversations, I guess.
That is a good point. For me, it came down to like a lens of how we should even be approaching it. Because I think that there are a lot of ways that AI is being utilized that I think are directly causing harm. And so for me, it comes from my Methodist heritage of doing good, doing no harm, right? I want to utilize AI in a way that will do good, but I also want to notice ways where harm is being done and try to strive to not do that. And so some clear boundaries for me are like no parasocial relationships within artificial intelligence. So that means where we essentially have a like emotional connection, an emotional tie to these tools. This is something that OpenAI themselves had to deal with a couple years ago. There were such deep relationships that whenever they would update into the new model, it would essentially do like a wipe of the personality, and people would say, "I've lost my significant other." Like they felt an emotional loss because of a relationship that they had with a tool that was getting a web update. And so that kind of reality is something that I'm striving to try and warn against and be aware of and be knowledgeable of, so that we don't have those kind of relationship gaps crossed, so that we don't cross that boundary. Another huge one for me is generative AI. So I really steer clear. I know that not everybody is going to lay this boundary with me, and that's okay. But at least for the people that I am in relationship with in my pastoral setting, it would cause direct harm to them if they saw me utilizing generative AI. If I was to create an image, I have good relationships with artists. And so if I were to create an image that looked like their work, without asking them, without consulting them, or potentially commissioning them, like that would be a direct insult to them. Now, there's always conversations to be had, and there's always ways that we can like talk about what this looks like. And so for me, it's important that at a bare minimum, if you're not willing to say, look, this tool is too helpful, I'm going to have to generate images, I'm going to have to generate video, then at least have boundaries laid in a policy. And so I'm going to encourage folks in the book to like lay out some form of policy. Kenny Jang has a lot of really good work in this world of laying AI policies. Somebody who is way more a proponent of generative AI than I am, but still agrees with me, I believe, pretty firmly on like, you at least need to be having the conversations so that you're aware of what's going on here. There was an instance of this kind of relationship crossing not too long ago where there was an AI Jesus that would offer insight. And they were on Twitch. And so it was an AI image generated version of Jesus that would move with the text that they were generating, and people would ask questions in the Twitch chat, and then Jesus would respond. And the thing was that Jesus wasn't doing a bad job. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't like theologically unground, but the problem was that it's not Jesus. So it's just crossing a line of ethics that for me is the bigger issue of what's actually happening in these relationships that we're building with technology and tools.
Amy was just telling me about a new show recently that was about a person who was, I guess, terminally diagnosed and started to try to generate themselves into an AI so that their wife or their significant other and their family would have them forever. They could just log onto their computer and talk to dad. And there's a moment where apparently the main character says something to the effect of, "I'm starting to feel like you're a better me than me."
Yeah.
And I went, "Oh, that's interesting." And then I started doing some research and things like keeping your significant others or lost loved ones, alive through that is becoming a thought process. Kind of downloading yourself in to live forever. So there are, with all things, things you have to watch out for. And I think, Nathan, you are exactly right. We have to start having the conversations now. It's like anything else the church has likes to kick down the road, right? And go, we'll talk about it the next quadrennium or whatever. And the whole world's changed 5 times, right? I think you're right. It's right now.
Well, and I love that you did a little bit further research too, John, because I think what's one thing that you mentioned in the book, Nathan, but also that I've noticed myself is that like a lot of what people know about AI is from media. And so, they might watch, a movie or something like that, and it kind of colors everything they believe about it. And so I think, to your point, reading a book like Nathan's, plug intended, but also, it encourages you to kind of do that extra research to kind of not just take the thoughts of an artist who is creating a movie, but also kind of develop your own kind of understanding. And like you were saying, Nathan, drawing your own lines, deciding where you draw the line. Like you were saying, you draw the line at generative AI, deciding where you draw the line and how you can continue to do good and also not do harm as well.
I don't know if we defined generative AI, but just for the people so generative AI is anything where, correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, I shouldn't be even doing this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it, and then you can slap me down.
Do it. Do it.
That it moves from the analyzing and restructuring and reframing and all that stuff to actually generating what we might call content. So saying, hey, ChatGPT, I have a great idea for a book about young people in the church in the 2005, and I would like these 5 different quotes and generate.
Yes.
And it would write something.
Yeah.
And I think, and that goes for anything from video to pictures to anything where it creates something new.
Yeah, I'm more often concerned about the realm of like image and video generation.
Oh, me too.
But a similar level of boundary of like creating the something from nothing, it's simply not really possible. And so that's another level of the ethics of the thing, is acknowledging that everything that is created by AI, it is simply a tool. It is simply a machine. And so it's pulling from other things with varying levels of permission. And so, like, at a bare minimum, if you're going to use it for text generation, for generating something like a book, then you need to ensure that it's using your own words, your own thoughts. And so I know a lot of people that will do the voice memo thing. So they might record their voice, transcribe that, send that to an AI and say, clean this up for me. I think that's a boundary to set. Some people may be opposed to that. I think a lot of people will see that a whole lot more reasonable than going on and creating like a Studio Ghibli type anime version of themselves where they're like, maybe that crosses a line for me, maybe it doesn't. But that's definitely a different level of, okay, that's built on the backs of artists from Ghibli versus this is built on the backs of a voice memo I made. Like those are different levels of what do we want to bring to the fray whenever we're having these conversations, and what kind of expectations do we want to set for ourselves, and especially with those in ministry, like you have a context, you have a community that you are beholden to. There is a relationship that you're forging and a work that you're tasked towards, and so these things can't just be kind of taken lightly, but instead should be had in the community that you're serving.
So I have a question, Nathan. So, for example, when you were with us previously on the podcast, we had a conversation about AI tools then as well, and we talked about Grammarly, for example. Sure. It's a tool that you use to, when you're writing, it will correct your grammar, and if you use the paid version, it will suggest better, clearer ways for you to write. For you to make your points in different paragraphs and things like that. It'll offer to rewrite certain parts of your work to make it clearer and things like that, which I previously had very little problem with. I thought, I'm thinking this is my work that I am creating, and the tool is really just kind of cleaning things up for me. Later on, I come to understand that, like you said, Nathan, it's never creating something from nothing. And so later on, I come to understand that even in Grammarly, it is taking what it's learned from the work of other people to make those suggestions to rewrite certain things. So now I feel like personally, I'm a little bit in the gray area where I'm like, am I crossing a line? Am I relying a lot on other people's work to get my work done, even though I feel like overall in whatever I'm writing, I am putting forth my own thoughts, things that I really want to say. It's just helping me say it in a clearer, sometimes more concise way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does. And it all lays down to this: is it being done in an ethical way? Are there policies being laid? Are there things being done on the behalf of Grammarly? Like, are they being transparent about how their work is done? Because an argument could be made going down the road further of like, well, I mean, I also don't know how to build a printing press. And so that was built on the labor of somebody else who knew how to make that thing. Somebody else who knew how to code Microsoft Word so that I could type into Microsoft Word. But I had trust in the companies that was ethically sourced, that they were paying the person who had coded Microsoft Word, that they were paying the person who had crafted the printing press, and hopefully adequately well, right? Like there was this layer of trust that was built into our industry that I think a lot of that trust has been lost. And I think it's been lost on the capitalistic side, but I think it's also been lost on the consumer side. One of the things that I wanted to highlight in the book was this concern that I have over the education situation revolving AI, where we're getting a lot of like AI checkers and people running their students' papers through AI and that kind of thing. And it's like, I have mixed feelings on that, because on one hand, I understand where the professor is coming from, but doesn't it feel wrong that there is this innate distrust in the student? Like, I don't know. I just think that's weird. That doesn't feel good to me. I don't like that we have so little respect for the student-teacher relationship that the teacher can't respect the student. Like, I understand that there are students that cheat, but to go in it as an assumption, that just feels wrong. That feels weird. And so there's this layer of over all of this, which is why I'm saying that I think ethics is the right lens to view this from, is because there is this layer of pastoral, church, theological, sociological, cultural work that is muddy, that hasn't been done, that hasn't been thought through. of we're making all of these kind of assumptions on one another as human beings. And we're forgetting to do the like important work of relationship building and society building and understanding one another on either a theological or just a sociological level.
I just had a thought of, I wonder if the Board of Ordained Ministry uses any AI.
Right?
Questions are going to be asked. Huh. Because when you were saying run through the system, and I went, I wonder. But my real question, I think the question that everybody has asked in our particular field is, what about writing sermons?
Yep.
What do you do? Because I mean, if you're a pastor out there and you haven't logged into your AI or wherever and just typed Isaiah, 13, 1 through, and just said, I would like a progressive sermon about love in this, you're going to get quite a piece.
Yeah.
You're going to, I guarantee you, there's going to be parts you're going to be kind of impressed with. And you're going to go, that's really interesting. Ooh, that's a really nice way to say that. Ooh, so, Nathan?
I think this is not really like a new phenomenon. I feel like this has been really since the internet, maybe even since before then. I mean, we've had written sermon illustration books forever, but like I think there is this. Again, it comes down to a level of trust and a level of what are we asking our questions of ourselves as clergy people. I personally think that we need to have more trust in ourselves and in our own sermon writing and in our own capacity to at least do a first pass, like I would be lying if I'd said that I'd never put in my sermon that I'd already written to AI and said like, what are my weak spots? What are the areas where you're noticing some potential that I could make another argument here? Or maybe even where like coming from a Wesleyan lens, do you see any opportunities for where I could like go and read one of Wesley's sermons or go and take like a note that might really enhance my thought here? I don't see anything wrong necessarily with using it again as a tool for augmentation. For me, that's the same as Googling and going on to Google and saying like, I need sermon illustrations for XYZ, and then going and combing through every website that it comes up with. It's just a faster way of essentially doing a search engine. And for me, that's a boundary that I'm fine having. Like I don't see anything wrong with augmentation in that way. But again, it comes down to like, am I copy pasting the words? Am I just saying exactly what it wants me to say in my transcript or in my manuscript? At that point, I think that becomes an ethical question for us to ask of ourselves. It's like, is this my work? Do I feel comfortable putting my name on something that I am just responding to verbatim? Back in the day, would I have just word for word copied whatever sermon illustration that I would have gotten? Is that how I would have done it, or would I have changed it a little bit, made it a little bit of my own? If I wouldn't have changed it, I sure hope we would attribute and say where I got this from. I don't see anything wrong with that. But there is this interesting like level of, I think it behooves the seminary to be educating on this.
Oh, yes.
To be at least providing a lens with which to like explore the possibilities.
I would think that a smart seminary right now would make that be pushing to make that a mandatory course coming up, because it really is redefining so much so fast.
Yeah.
If not a course, then at least an element of a course.
Yeah, it's going to be everywhere. I mean, like if you're not conversive, if you can't go in this new world, you're going to be a little bit lost.
Well, speaking of which, speaking of education too, I had a conversation with one of members here at our church, and he was explaining to me that he found out that there are schools now, like from K through 12 schools, private schools that are based solely on AI, and that the the tuition is like $45,000 a year, but these students are learning AI through everything that they do in their schoolwork. And so, like,
that makes
to
me
your
nervous.
point, John, we're like next level right now.
Yeah, that's
You know what I mean?
that's
Like
leaning
our
in
world
tonight
is
right there.
exactly our world. So if the seminaries aren't having that, there's definitely going to be a gap for sure.
Yeah, and because so Nathan, I want to ask you this. So at the let's get. Oh man, I'm going to get so Christian and biblical. No. All right, my bad. But we're here. So it. Okay. How do we avoid the temptation to just, like you said, so to just put in the scripture, maybe even with a lot of our, if we do it ethically, if you could say that, whatever our individual, to say, I put in a bunch of my own words, maybe I copied and pasted some of my stuff from my previous sermon, suggested a few things, and bam, right? And I read that thing and I'm going, that is so much better said than if I had spent 12 hours from morning to night just writing, editing, backspace, reworking. If I had spent my whole day, I still probably would not have been able to say it quite as beautifully or as eloquently or with, I mean, I think you know what I mean. And it's, so there's this, I feel like in the future and as we go on, there's going to be this temptation, not just to use it to give us the things that we need, because that's fantastic. But how do we avoid the temptation of it writes better than me faster? And I mean a lot faster. Mm-hmm. So how do we avoid this new temptation? Because I feel like it's brand new. Now's the time to really talk about it, to start really understanding that it is a temptation because it's right there.
Yeah, we live in a culture of convenience. We live in a culture of constant overbearing expectations. And that is the bigger temptation for me, is that there is maybe an innate perfectionism in us to want to write the perfect sermon, to want to be the next big thing, to want to be the next megachurch pastor, to want to be the next groundbreaking evangelist, to be the next New York Times bestseller. Like there is this mixture of these two worlds of convenience. I want everything to be as easy and as in front of me as possible, mixed in with this expectation that either the world or ourselves or our careers or whatever has on us to be more, to always be more,
whatever.
And all of that is mixed in with this rising tide of new technology. But I think if we go back to what it means to be a Christian in the world, what it means to be following Jesus, what it means to follow and to do and to lead if we're pastors, I ground this book in the two greatest commandments. And so in this, how am I loving God? How am I loving my neighbor? If we'll take the time to put those two things over our desire for convenience and our desire for efficiency, then we will be asking better questions of the ethics of the thing. If we're really taking the time and asking, is this loving my neighbor well? Then I think we'll discover something. I think we'll be able to take the time to slow down and to contemplate the thing and to discern it into a better path forward. But if we're unwilling to take the time to slow down and to really resonate with the reality of like, what I'm doing is not trying to be the best pastor. What I'm doing is not trying to be the best evangelist. What I'm doing is trying to love God and trying to love my neighbor better. Those are my goals. And so if we can maintain those as our like strong grounding goals, then I think that we will discover technology will either help us or hinder us. And we will be able to ask questions of that in our day-to-day lives. And again, I think it's easy to call it the boogeyman. I think it's really easy to call it a crutch. I think it's easy to do a lot of those things. But the harder way forward, the harder thing, is to intentionally be aware of the thing and explore it with a Christ-focused, with a human forward, with a loving God, loving neighbor, doing good, doing no harm lens. That's the harder thing, but I think it's the more important thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was so well said.
Can y'all hear that? Can y'all hear that?
Yeah,
I heard it. I heard an amen. Did you hear that?
That might be in a clip there. That was
Yeah, I heard a hallelujah somewhere.
yeah.
I know I did.
Jesse.
You
we
are
pushed him into
preaching
it.
today, man. My
Spirit.
heart is strangely warmed for
Yeah,
sure.
I got
I
chills,
appreciate that.
So, well, my heart's strangely warmed a little bit here. We have a segment where we strangely heartwarming, and if anything is strange right now, it's AI, and that's okay. That's not that. Every time an angel ever descended, the first thing out of its mouth is, "Don't be afraid."
Exactly.
It's gonna be weird, right? Don't be afraid. Yes, things are about to change, but the first thing, don't be afraid. Deal with it. Meet it where it is. So I want to ask us, but you in particular, Nathan, where you've seen technology used in a way that made you feel more human, not less, where you feel like humanity, you struck something deeper because of it. What do you got?
So I make this recommendation as often as I can because I want as many people to hear this as possible. If you have not ever taken the time to go and watch the documentary, The Remarkable Life of Ibelin, Ibelin, you absolutely must. So this is a story of a young man named Matt Steen who is diagnosed with some sort of just crippling disease that is deteriorating his body at a rate that he cannot do what normal young men are able to do. He cannot go out and play games with his friends. He cannot go out and have a good time or go out to dinner or go out and party. He can't do any of those things. He's trapped in his house with his family. And the source that he finds is World of Warcraft. He creates an account, he finds community, and he experiences just the most rich and robust form of community, and is able to do that through his avatar of Ibelin. He makes friends. He forms deep relationships. He falls in love and breaks hearts, like all of this stuff. So World of Warcraft shaped him in such an important way. And then this is not a spoiler because this happens in the first 5 minutes of the documentary, but he passes. And whenever he passes at a very young age, his parents have this doubt that this was a life wasted, that all he ever did was play games, that he never really formed any real relationships. And then all of his World of Warcraft friends begin to reach out. And that's the documentary, is this person who these parents thought, our son is never going to be able to experience life or mean anything. Wow. We were so incredibly wrong. And this is such a beautiful story. So for real, if there is anything that you must experience, it is The Remarkable Life of Ibelin. It is my favorite story to tell. It is so important that we do nerdy sermons on YouTube. I did 3 because it's so important. It's such a good story, and it wraps up perfectly for me why what I'm doing in digital ministry is not because I think video games are cool. That's not what I'm doing. It's because I so love the nerd, the geek, and the gamer, and I want them to have their stories told because they love so deeply as well.
I'm not crying. You're
that.
crying.
2 things.
No, as somebody who
True.
I was there, man, when that game launched, and my parents at the time told me, you can't stop wasting your time there. Go out and make real friends. But those were real friends. And when I went away to college, that was a lifeline back to a couple of my friends at home. And yeah,
I love that. And it's amazing. Those moments, they remind us that like you said, these tools don't define us. Yeah. I think they reveal certainly what we value. And I'm grateful that we have opportunities to create tools like this that can make life so meaningful for so many. We also believe in honesty. And so it's time for, our epic fails. So Nathan, what's a moment where you personally realized you were either over-trusting or under-trusting technology in general?
Or just an utter tech fail.
Yeah. Whenever I first got started with this, it was back in 2020. And that was the rise of Zoom. Everybody was on Zoom. We were all obsessed with Zoom. It was all we were using. And we just needed to use it for our churches, use it for every meeting, use it for every worship, use it for everything. And so I had this vision of starting a stream on Twitch on Wednesday nights. We'd play through a game. The game that I was going to play through was like a Bible study vibe. So I was going to be playing through Undertale, and then we were going to play for an hour, and we would meet on Sunday, and I would get people to sign up for the Zoom call. And we had it, and the first week nobody showed up, and then we did it again, and the second week nobody showed up, and the third week nobody showed up, and then the fourth week I stopped doing it because nobody had showed up. And so I went to my coach at the time, and I was like, what's the deal? Like, I'm doing this thing, I'm playing this awesome game, I'm talking to people, they're coming to Twitch, they're being a part of the stream, they're hanging out in the chat, why are they not showing up on Zoom? And my coach was like, hey, Nathan, you're skipping from A all the way to Z. You're forgetting all of the relational steps along the way. Like, you're asking people who are in a chat box responding to a stream to show up on a separate call, on a Zoom, follow a link, get an email, sign up for a thing, turn on their camera, turn on their microphone, set it all up, and get to know you. He's like, you are skipping way too much of the relationship part. And so that was an important lesson for me, was to understand, like,
do that, by the way,
just because the technology is there.
All pastors, we skip over the relationships, start changing things at our new church, start doing. We skip the relationships, so 100%.
Just because people don't show up doesn't mean that they're not going to ever show up. It means that you've missed a step. You haven't taken them properly down the staircase into the relationship that you want them to be a part of. So that was an important lesson for me, is that Zoom is not some magic button. It is merely another tool that maybe will be right, maybe not.
I love that. But I love that you named the most important part, is that, regardless of where you think, it's like, sometimes I think about, the folks that used to come down to UNC Charlotte's campus when I was there, and just kind of argue with students. It's like, I feel like you have this deep truth that you believe in, that you want to share, but you're forgetting that it's really important to build relationships with people first before they accept the truth that you want to share with them, especially when these truths are difficult for them to hear and sometimes contrary to the ways that they're currently living their lives and the things that they currently believe. They're not going to trust your truth until they can trust you. So I love that. They're not going to show up until they can trust you. And I think that's beautiful. So we're gonna move forward. We're gonna talk about how we live wisely with AI. This is advice for our clergy. So for pastors, for parents, for leaders, and everyday people listening, what does wisdom look like here, Nathan?
Give us an approach.
Yeah. So in the book, I provide a framework that we can approach AI from, that I call the ethics engine. And so I lay out this whole concept of like how we should be doing any of this work, and really anything at all. Like, we have within our Wesleyan heritage, like the quadrilateral of how we can approach things. This is similar in that vein of like, I think that we can approach things in a lot of different ways. We can ask a lot of questions in discerning, but at the heart of the thing that should be moving all of this conversation forward, is our ethics. And so for me, again, I've already rooted that in this strong theological concept of loving God and loving neighbor, and maybe like a historical, traditional concept of doing good and doing no harm. But all of these things are going to be the lens with which I then move forward with ethics. And so rather than ever taking a step towards a technology without that ethics engine, imagine as if the car can't even move if it isn't being moved by that ethical lens. Don't do anything. Don't take any step towards implementation until you're able to first answer the question for yourself of, am I loving God? Am I loving neighbor in the midst of this? And I think that if we'll do that work, I think that this is, so here's the thing. It's really hard to write a book on AI. It's really hard to write a book on AI because it is so quickly moving. As soon as you write about one thing, the next thing has been done. As soon as you write about one concept, we're already three iterations down the line. You write about something at 1.0, it's 2.0 by the time you're done with the sentence. Right. So I wanted to try to provide the most evergreen approach that I could to any technology. to any iteration of AI that we get going forward. I can't predict the future. I can't know where we will be. There may be something that eventually proves me wrong, but I don't think so. I feel pretty confident in the evergreen concept that I laid down of I don't think there's a more ancient practice. I don't think there's a more grounding practice than the love of God and love of neighbor. So I feel pretty confident. It's held pretty strong for a while. I think it'll hold strong for a while longer. If we can maintain that as our core of our being and as a core of our ethic and a core of our discernment, that's going to be the wisest way forward. And I know that for some, like that's going to come across as maybe a cop-out. Maybe that's like too easy of the answer, but I really think that if you take the time and actually discern that, whatever the question may be, like we could talk about specifics. We could talk about, okay, well, what do I do then with, ChatGPT in regards to that? Well, might be an important question. What do I do about water consumption? Well, might be an important question. Let's think about that. How are we loving our neighbor if they're building all of these, huge data centers that are running small towns out of water? Well, what control do we have over that? What stance can we make about that? Is total, boundary not using AI at all going to be your answer? Is trying to support communities that are wanting to write up petitions against it to put the data centers into areas that they can go, supporting technology that's being more ethical in that lens? There's never going to be a perfect system, but there is going to be the gift of awareness and then the discernment of how we handle that once we know what's happening.
Just ways to approach it. I like that it's funny. I thought maybe you wrote it that way not because there was no other way, but that makes sense now that AI just changes too fast.
Right.
I like that there are principles. So like you said, you could write a whole book on all of the current problems and all the current questions, and it would be irrelevant tomorrow. So well done.
Well, and
giving us some rubrics.
Yeah, I appreciate those rubrics, and I also love that something that I've heard a lot is that folks think that they can't be a believer or can't be Christian because they feel like the Bible is outdated. And here you are taking these biblical concepts to talk about a future that we don't even really know yet. So it's not just that the Bible is working in our present. It's that these scriptural beliefs, these scriptural truths are preparing us for a future that we don't even know. And so I love your approach to the book. I would still recommend that folks go out and get it as soon as possible because things are changing. But
order it now.
Order it now. But I also feel very, very confident that these truths will last forever because they already have.
Yeah, I don't think God is threatened by our tools.
No, amen to that.
I think grace adapts. I think God adapts. I think our faith adapts. I think, honestly, and if I might get myself in a bit of trouble, the church hasn't adapted enough. And I don't mean that in a it hasn't changed enough. It has not. We have been what I've called victims of our success. We've just, in our country in particular, it was just wall-to-wall Christians for the longest time, and almost all of them were in church on Sunday morning, and they were just bursting at the seams. We had to build bigger churches that are now, mostly empty in a lot of situations, in a lot of capacities. And so lean in, folks. Get this book, lean into what's going on right now. Maybe it'll even help you lean into the present in other ways. Humanity's always going to be the center story for God's story.
Love that. And to your point, also, Nathan, we have, as a church, I think, we've become victim to convenience and wanting to do things and hope for things that means that life will be easy. And so let's keep doing things the way that we've done it because that's the most convenient option for us because we know what to expect and we know how to do this thing. Instead of let's step into this new reality that we're in and have some epic fails and have some situations where we might get egg on our face, we might embarrass ourselves. I feel like we've chosen a lot of the time to stay away from that, to stay in our offices and not go out into the world, but I think it's important for us to take that step and to move forward. So thank you so much for helping us to navigate that, for sure.
If we must
Any last
fail,
word?
let it at least be in an honest pursuit of loving people better.
Oh yeah.
Amen.
Run into that wall face first. Just, go with love. Love it. I mean,
love that.
absolutely.
I love that.
Any final notes?
friends.
Anything else, Nathan? Any last bit? Have you asked AI if there's anything else you should say?
I have not. I guess for me is to say that if you have any curiosity about either side, I really wanted to try to be very curious with this book. And I am not somebody that if you're like, oh, this is just another like AI grifter trying to sell this thing they're making. Nope. I do not like espouse everything AI, nor am I an AI hater. I'm not somebody that's just going to be like panning this is all evil and bad. And so if you're somebody that is curious, then I think that you will enjoy this book. That's the same lens that I take with digital ministry. I am not all about digital ministry because it is digital, but because I am about the people there. And in the same way, I think that we should be approaching AI with how can we possibly best love others through this. So one other thing worth noting is that this was very much written with the intention of it being read in a group, or especially read in like a church group. So it does have a leadership guide. It has questions and a study guide to go along with it, as well as some short little videos to go with each chapter. So if you are curious about really walking through this together, and ideally even like starting this as a precursor to writing an AI policy together, I think that's the best possible way forward, is to enter into this, treating it as if this is a true like text with which to wrestle theologically with these concerns, so that you might be able to write a policy for your church community or just your broader community.
I love that. Well, friends, this has been Means of Grace. Our guest today has been Reverend Nathan Webb, the author of God and the Machine, and you'll find links in the show notes to a lot of our conversation, but most importantly to the book. So remember this: tools change, but grace doesn't. God still moves slowly, and we should too. Love still requires presence, and no machine can replace a life lived together. You are not alone. We'll see you again in the future.
God bless.